just heard was an overture played by Haz'art Trio and put together by Monsieur Fadhel Boubaka. It's a kind of medley of different Arab songs, mainly of the 50s and 60s, and it was kind of new at this time for like different reasons. For example, they used a lot of rhythmic improvisation and also used the development of different motives, as we will see in the further discussion of this video, which is about Western musical forms, will appear in many different places. From my point of view, dialogue is the basic principle of music, like that gives it all the power. And this dialogue could be between musicians on stage or in the studio, between musicians and the audience, and could also be a dialogue between different elements of a musical composition, like one musical theme or phrase talks sort of to another musical theme, so they are like connected to each other, and this creates a kind of dialectic relation of thesis and antithesis, like, or you could call it call and response. So the musical themes of a composition, they stand in contrast with each other, and this dialogue of different musical parts, you could also extend it to different musical cultures, so like for example Western music and Oriental music. So music is like dialogue on many different levels, like from my point of view, you could say. And there's also a similarity, for example, in like literature. There's also like storytelling, and the question is always how good are you able to convey a message to your audience. And there's also an author that I like a lot, Joseph Campbell. He wrote a book, for example, The Hero with 1,000 Faces, and he tried to analyze the different forms of storytelling in different traditions in the world, and discovered that there is a recurring formal model, and I see a parallel in this recurring model that comes back also in the music, and I want to guide you through different musical Western forms and discover how this model comes back in different parts of the composition. So I want to start with the most basic Western musical form, which is the blues. Mostly it's 12 bars, sometimes 24 bars, and a lot of blues players don't take it so seriously. They stretch the form, something like this, and I want to play an example by the famous Robert Johnson, who was a blues player, one of the first ones. He composed the blues from 4 until 8, and this is like the basic phrase. This is like the opening phrase. He's just using like a motive, and then he's putting this motive to the 4 chord, and then in the next line of the blues he's repeating this motive again. So again the second motive, because we are on the 4 chord, and then he's bringing up like this answering phrase with the typical blue note, and then again like a closing phrase. So basically we have, he worked with motives, and we have 3 different phrases that are like sort of connected to each other, and also he's giving like this basic phrase, and then he's contrasting the phrases with answering phrases. And for for the further explanation of the other parts, I want to, of the other musical forms, I want to sort of structure the possibilities that you have in like musical forms in a very basic way. So, because there's always a main storytelling device which delivers the main message of the song. This would be in the song form of pop songs, for example, the verse and the chorus, so both of them together. In a jazz tune, it would be like the A part. In a rondo, where we had some similarities of rondo and samai in Arab music already. So in a rondo would be the refrain, and in samai the hane. And then there's always a contrasting section, like with a meter change, a key change, or a change of character, orchestration, arrangement. In the song form, a pop song form, this would be the bridge. In the jazz song, this is like the B part. And the rondo, you call it the couplet, and in the samai, it's teslim. So like always the same ideas that structure the musical form. And then you could like look a bit deeper into the structures. For example, in jazz you have different varieties. Sometimes you have A-B, or A-A-B, or A-A-B-C. But this is like very basic construction of these jazz songs, and especially in jazz, the forms tend to be very like clear and simple. This is like mainly the reason, because if you want to like improvise or have freedom on the form, there should be like at least one part of the music that is sort of fixed to make it easier for you to express yourself. And in this example for a pop form would be like Ain't No Mountain High Enough. Everybody knows this song probably. This is like A, B, A, B, C, A, B. So like mostly like verse, chorus, bridge and verse, chorus. And as we already heard, the samai and the rondo is like altering the refrain and with different kind of verses. I want to go now a bit deeper into like the Western sonata form. This is like a very big topic, like in Western music, and developed like through like Mozart and Beethoven. And I want to show play some examples like of this of Schubert's 8th Symphony. This symphony is called like the unfinished one because normally you would have 3 or 4 movements in a typical Western symphony, and this symphony has just 2 movements. There are like different stories why, but basically nobody knows. He just finished 2 movements, and I want to explain the first movement of this symphony. The whole symphony starts with an introduction. And this introduction has an intro motive, you could call it. It's played by cellos and double basses. Maybe this is the reason why I like this symphony a lot. It's like going like this. So it starts like if you would hear this in the orchestra, it starts totally like out of nowhere in piano. It's like typical for an introduction of a sonata form. It sets the audience into the right mood for the piece. In this case, it's like really dark and like mysterious, like from the atmosphere. And then we go to the first real formal part of a sonata form, which is like the exposition, where the composer presents all the main themes. Usually there are like 2 main themes, and you can also call them subjects. So we have always a first and a second subject. In this case, the first subject is like also similar to the intro motive, really melancholic, dark, atmospheric. It's like also in B minor, and my friend Fadhel Boubaka will help me to show this theme. But it's already like a little bit brighter if you compare to the intro motive, which is still in minor, but it's getting a bit away from this like melancholic atmosphere in the beginning. And some bars later in this movement, the second subject appears. Now it's like completely in an opposite direction. It's a contrast to the intro motive and to the first subject. Like now it's a G major and joyful and lively, and this is like typical for like an exposition of a sonata form. So the first two subjects are they contrast each other. They have different musical character, stay in a different key, like from B minor to G major, and this creates like you could call it like a tonal conflict. So, as I told you in the beginning, this idea of talking to each other, having a communication going on, and thesis, antithesis. So we have like the first thesis, the dark, melancholic ideas, and then the answering person or the answering motive says, okay, now maybe don't be so sad. You can be joyful because of this or this. Like it's like a conversation. So let's play the second subject of Schubert's 8th Symphony in the first movement. 1, 2, 3. Different vibe now because it sounds more like joyful countryside maybe, or even like a bit folkloric motive for my feeling. But Schubert is like, as we see now when we go to the development, he treats his symphony a bit uncommon. You could say normally a composer develops after this exposition in the development part his two subjects, but Schubert, the two subjects reappear in the development, but they like barely get developed, but the intro motive gets developed. So he's still in sonata form, but he makes some changes, like to maybe to get away from the huge Beethoven, who always like created the most masterful sonata form structures, and then you have, when you compose after Beethoven, you have to find your own way. And so, like as I said, development. So develop your musical material, your subjects, or you can also develop different motifs that appeared before. And can you do this through like use of sequencing, like, or use the motives, put them to another rhythm, another key, another musical character, and usually this is like it's going like, mostly it starts rather low, and it has and at the end of the development there's always like a dramatic climax which leads back to the next part, and this could be like, if you make it the parallel to the argument, to the discussion, they get, the people who argue with each other, they get like heated up to try to find like an agreement. And in the Schubert Symphony, as I said, the intro motive gets developed. In the intro, I played the motive in B minor, now it's in E minor. And he's not only playing the motive, but he's also adding some extra stuff at the end, as we will see it here now. So let's play the development motive. Fadhel will join me in a while. So, like, Schubert is using this main minor idea, and at the end, Fadhel played this motive also, but he's changing, like, he's adding some chromatic ideas at the end, and then he's using like chromatic transpositions of it. Going up, and this like creates, as I said before, like this in the beginning is rather mellow, and then it creates more and more tension. And yeah, in this case, he's, as I said, he's not developing these like the two subjects, but he's developing the intro motive. So he's getting back to this dark and mysterious character from the beginning, and makes it even more dramatic. And when he comes back to the third part of sonata form, the recapitulation, this is like the ending part of sonata form, and the composer brings the original thematical, the themes, he brings it back, but usually with a slightly changed arrangement or orchestration, like with a twist, you could say. But the tonal conflict, which was like in the beginning, somehow in the music, it kind of resolves a bit, because mostly the two subjects appear in the same key. Like we had before, B minor and G major. In this case, Schubert is transposing the second subject from G major to D major. So we have D major is the relative major key to B minor. So you could argue that it's like almost the same key. So maybe Schubert again treats his recapitulation a bit differently, because he's like not coming back completely to the same key, but he resolved the conflict like almost completely. If you could compare this to this discussion idea, it could also be sort of okay if you have like two people arguing with each other, and through the development and the argument they get close to each other, closer, but like not agreeing on the same ideas or values or whatever. But maybe this is also okay. You can accept like that you may be a bit different than the other person. And let's just play this second subject in the D major key now. 1, 2, 3. Yeah. So here is Schubert is adding also some like extra motivic development at the end of this subject, and after this part, the recapitulation, there comes the coda, and Schubert is bringing again back. He's bringing back the introduction motive in B minor. So we get back to the point where we started the whole experience. So we'll play the coda now. So, and after all this discussion of Schubert's 8th Symphony, I want to go to an idea that I have, like how to connect this this kind of knowledge that you maybe got about like a symphonic structure and sonata form and all the different storytelling device in Western musical form, and use it as an like inspiration or like a model for your own compositions or for your own improvisations, because I think you could use the basic structure of the sonata form. You have two motives, or sometimes more, like different musical material, different ideas. They are in contrast with each other, they get developed, and at the end they come back, but sort of like changed through the development, through the experience you had like as a player or as a listener. And if you transfer this idea, for example, to like a jazz tune, like in a jazz tune you always improvise on the chorus, normally like in a standard situation. And this is called like the head. So you have the head in, and you could say the head in is like parallel to the exposition of the sonata form, where the main ideas are presented, and then one or two players, somebody plays a solo, and this could be like, you could see it as a development of the musical material of the head, like improvising on the themes of this composition. Like as we said, you can use motives or like sequencing, transpose it, use rhythmic variation, bring up contrasting themes, like just create a dialogue with the themes that are like already in the composition. And then in the head out, after the solo section, this like could be like your recapitulation. You bring back the main ideas, but like not exactly in the same way as in the beginning, like because something changed through the experience that you had. So like we have for example, we have a tune by Haz'art Trio. It's called Keep It Secret. Fadhel composed it, and it's in the beginning you have a very calm, mellow theme, and then we all do some improvisations through the piece, and at the end it's the main idea of this piece comes back, but the character completely changed, like it's like more punchy rock vibe and much more groovy, like played, like, but it's still the same motive, even the character changed. And I really like to have this broader, bigger idea for the pieces, like not like having two fixed ideas in the beginning and the end, and then something like random stuff happens in between. It should be like it's awesome from my point of view if all these different musical ideas are somehow like connected and also going back to this idea of having a conversation, like so in the end you create something new out of thesis, antithesis, and you have a synthesis in the end, and you could like transfer this idea also to our band. Like one theme is like a Western theme, and one theme is like an Oriental theme, and the best would be to create a real thin thesis in the end, like where all the different musical materials like really come together and create something new that is like consisting of both sides, but not like putting all the different elements like just into a big pot and one big pot and mash it up, like still keeping the essence of the material but develop it to create something new.